Day is just days away, and if you're looking for a gift, consider the gift of health. Good morning, I'm Jessica Lovell, and welcome to the Morning Medical Update. We want to keep our dads around for as many Father's Days as possible, and that starts with good health. Wellness exams are important for maintaining that healthy lifestyle. Checkups help create a clearer picture of your health for physicians over time, and in fact, you should be visiting your doctor even when you're feeling great. We'll dive into all of that and tell you why here in just a moment. But first, let's get to our morning rounds. 39th Street looks a little different thanks to renovations to our emergency department. There's a new drop-off entrance at the corner of 39th and Cambridge, but that is just part of a bigger project to overhaul our emergency department. The emergency department's medical director, Dr. Ken Marshall, is here with us to tell us more about what these changes are and what they mean. Good morning, Dr. Marshall. How are you?
Oh, it's good to be here. I'm doing great.
Good to see you. So first, just tell us, why were these renovations so necessary?
Really, basically, we had outgrown our previous space. We have a lot of patients in the emergency department. We're constantly growing. And so before COVID, we only really had about 45 treatment spaces in the ED. And even now, after just phase one completing, we have about 62, and that's going to continue to grow as construction goes on. So that was really the biggest reason, but there are a bunch of other kind of ancillary benefits that we see as we got the opportunity to redesign the ED and put more kind of current design philosophies in place.
So renovations, as you mentioned, they're happening in phases. The first phase is now complete. So you mentioned, but what changed with that phase one? Of course, more space and area and a different place to drop off.
Right, yeah. So again, more rooms for one, but we completely changed the way that patients will come into the emergency department. So if patients arriving by EMS will still come in the previous EMS entrance, which hasn't changed, but now patients will be dropped off on 39th Street. There's a new carve out for cars to drop off patients. They'll actually come in on the ground level and enter by an elevator up to triage on the first floor. And so it'll be a new arrival experience for our patients.
So what do you think will be the biggest impact for patients? Kind of the good, the bad. Is there anything that they should be expecting as far as this goes?
One of the biggest changes is that our rooms are bigger. On our previous configuration from our design that opened in 2016, there were a lot of curtain spaces that were sort of a legacy model of designing emergency departments. Once construction is complete, all of our bed spaces will have not curtains, but instead with doors, bigger rooms that are fully featured, which, given our patient complexity, is going to be much better for patients. Also, a lot of our rooms are now going to have natural light, which we know is better for patients on the inpatient setting. So we decided, let's go ahead and apply the same logic to our patients in the emergency department. So natural light, bigger rooms, I think it's going to be a much better experience for our patients.
Yeah, who can complain about that, for sure. Now, will that be the only entrance? They will no longer be using any of the other entrances, or will they have a couple of options?
That's a great question. Yeah, so if they're being dropped off by private vehicle, most of the time they'll be using our 39th Street entrance. However, they'll still be able to access the emergency department through the main hospital entrance, coming through the Cambridge Cafe like they have been able to do. Mm-hmm. So between the two patient drop-offs, which would be the main hospital entrance or the emergency department entrance on 39th Street, or then if you're unlucky enough to be coming in by ambulance, that's obviously a third way.
Right, we don't want you here, but right. If you have to be here, we're trying to make the experience as good as possible. And just before we let you go, what's the future phases? What do they look like?
More rooms, essentially. We do have in phase two, which will start in November, we'll start getting basically larger resuscitation rooms, which we needed for a long time. A lot of times we have multidisciplinary teams in, and so having a large rooms when you have very sick patients, that's going to be a huge advantage for us. More rooms with natural light, and just more space. That's what's coming in November, and then other phases.
More space to take care of our sick patients. And we'll see you back here, Dr. Marshall, after phase two is complete. Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right. Have a great one.
All right.
Well, your doctors, they will be there for you when you're sick. We know that. But the more information they have on your health overall, the easier it is to see when something goes wrong. We are joined this morning here at the table by internal medicine specialist, Dr. Jennifer McRae. Good morning.
Morning.
Good to see you. Along with two of her patients, Jack and Becky Seltzer. Hello, how are you?
Good morning, fine.
Good to see you fine folks with us today. Dr. McRae, let's just jump in and tell us, what steps should men in particular be taking to prioritize their health? It's all about fathers this month, and we're celebrating Father's Day, but what do they need to be doing?
I think some of the basic things, and I will always say these, are if you're smoking, to quit smoking. And to stay active. So walking can do a lot to maintain your health. That's going to then keep your heart healthy. It's going to give your body a certain reservoir of wellness so that if you do get sick, you've got maybe more area to get sick before you get really, really sick. For men specifically, I think it's paying attention to the risk factors for heart disease and stroke, which would be blood pressure, cholesterol, eating a heart-healthy diet. Those sorts of things will go a long way to keeping you healthy for a very long time.
Well, it's taking the control of the things that you can do daily, right?
Yes, yeah, you can't stop aging, so you got to take care, you got to manage the other things you can manage.
Absolutely. So talk to us about what is called a wellness visit, because that is a specific type of doctor's visit, and it's defined by Medicare. So what is supposed to be happening at these wellness visits?
Yeah, so the Medicare annual wellness visit is specifically for people who have Medicare, and there's a version that's your welcome to Medicare for your first year on Medicare, and then every year subsequently after that you have a Medicare annual wellness visit. This is a questionnaire that Medicare sort of lays out where we talk about not just your health and your risk factors, but things that feed into social determinants of health, your diet, your level of independence, home safety, advanced directives, things like that. And that really is then a comprehensive look at all the things that can affect your health and gives us a good sort of idea of where you are at that visit. It doesn't actually necessarily include a physical exam. So Medicare doesn't pay for an annual physical. Now, if you have a commercial supplement to your insurance, they will. Most providers and physicians will do a physical as part of the annual wellness visit because we can't help it. We've got to listen to your heart and lungs and make sure everything is healthy. But for Medicare patients, there isn't necessarily a physical. And for people who are younger on non-Medicare insurance, there is an idea of an annual physical, which obviously includes wellness as well, but that's a little less scripted. And that's where there's a physical exam and checking someone's vitals and going over all of those screenings and vaccines and labs and things that we need to do to make sure someone's healthy.
So does that mean they need two separate appointments? The wellness visit isn't technically enough? They need to take it further?
It depends on your provider. So in our clinic, we've been combining our Medicare annual wellness visit with a physical exam and doing both of those. And for our younger patients, you can do your annual physical all in one visit. But there are some instances where we do have to separate them into two visits if a patient's very complex, or we do the wellness visit, the questionnaire over like a telehealth, and then we get somebody to come back in for the physical exam. Sometimes we have to do that.
Yeah, and then you'll go from there.
Yeah.
So Jack and Becky, you have been, well, you're first year Dr. McRae's patients, but you have been married for 50 years. You have, well, I want to see a picture of this gorgeous family you have, because you have 3 children, 13 grandchildren, a pretty incredible number up there. You both get your checkups together. So which one of you takes the lead on that? Of course, I knew you were going to point to your. I knew you were going to point to the lady. So tell us about that. Just how, when you guys talk about that, and Becky, he says you're the one who takes the lead.
I'm not sure I understand. You want to know why we do it?
Yeah,
why we do it?
And just making sure that Jack shows up where he's supposed to be.
Yeah. And
I'm here today because of her.
Yeah.
I love it.
Well, he's had a few issues, like with heart arrhythmia and 2 hips and some other things, and so it's very important that he get in and keep a maintenance. And for me, it's essential because I would never go to the doctor if it wasn't required. But because it's required, I do.
Really? Okay.
You know, because I didn't grow up going to doctors, and
But it's paid off.
Yes.
I mean, look at you two.
Oh my gosh.
It's paid off. So, Jack, does she have to pull you along or what?
Oh, yes. Well, no.
Yes.
This wellness checkup, it is really good because it's automatic pilot. I mean, all I have to do is show up, and the questions are there. And what it does is, I mean, it comes across things that I never think of.
Right.
And sometimes, and usually there's some suggestion about part of my health that really relevant. And I appreciate that. I mean, I really do.
You said kind of autopilot, which reminds me of what we were just talking about before the show started. You got a new sports car that kind of just runs really well, and you need to stick around and run just as good, right?
Yeah. I mean, I look forward to the annual wellness checkup. I really do.
To hear some good news, right?
Yeah. And even if there's a little shakiness in it, I'm glad to hear that too.
Yeah. Well, then you can get. I mean, knowledge is power, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So I want to talk about this stereotype. We talk about men kind of being stubborn, and we weren't surprised when Jack pointed to his wife, saying she's the one who kind of leads the way and making sure that you get into the doctor. Is that true? Do you really find that to be the case, Dr. McRae? Are we moving a little bit to where now men who are living longer lives are saying, hey, I want to live well?
So I think pre-pandemic, actually, it did feel a little bit true at times, and that it was infrequent that a man would come to established care unless he had a health concern or had gotten married, and yes, this is a stereotype, but gotten married and his partner requested that he get a doctor and start seeing the doctor. But then once the pandemic really started, I started to see a lot more men who realized that their health was important and they didn't have a primary care provider, and they really wanted to have someone that knew them well in the event that they got sick. And that's really kind of spanned all ages. I'm an internist, so I take care of adults. So from young men who just have turned 18 to men in their 80s and 90s are really now focusing on how to take care of themselves and stay healthy.
And I love making it a family affair. You know, everybody's on top of each other, and everybody knows what's going on. So you know some of those good questions to ask. So Becky and Jack, we know we talk about personal things with our doctors. How long did it take for you to feel comfortable speaking with your doctor and asking those questions?
I didn't find it to be a problem. A lot depends on the doctor.
Sure.
And right away I felt like my doctor really knew what she was talking about, and she talked in a language that I understood. Practical and it's useful stuff. So it was pretty quick.
Right. Thank you.
Well, she also discovered, she had told me to go in and have this checked by a dermatologist. And there was some cancer, and so it was removed successfully. And I think that's wonderful that I can depend on someone to see my whole body and notice when there's a difference.
To see something that you don't see, and having that rapport with somebody. Like you can remember, hey, I didn't see that last time. Let's get that checked out. So Dr. McRae, what are the risks of not having these wellness exams, not doing this regularly? We talk about putting this on the calendar, making it a special date, just like we make birthdays and Father's Day, and never to miss it.
So the benefit of a wellness exam is that then we're entirely focused on the things that aren't necessarily coming to the surface. So we're going to look at your blood pressure. We're going to see what cancer screenings or vaccines you might need. Whereas if you come in for a reason like back pain or constipation or something like that, that visit's going to be really focused on those symptoms. When we're really focusing on wellness, it's a good opportunity to step back and make sure that we cover everything. So by missing or not doing your wellness exams, we're trying to squeeze in some of that screening or wellness or guidelines into other visits. And sometimes things maybe get missed, or we don't catch on to things until they're too late.
And you talked about the screening and the guidelines, and we know we're going to be sitting at the table, hopefully with our fathers, our grandfathers this weekend. So what should we be asking them about? I know, like with my dad, he loves to go get his wellness exams because he loves to come and brag to me about how perfect he's like a specimen. At 76, he's so perfect, which is always like music to my ears as a daughter. But anything we should be just opening up the conversation about?
Yeah, I think that one, just having a sort of a family sense of it's important to go to the doctor and have a doctor that you trust and have a good relationship with can go a long way to keeping you and your family healthy. And then I think when you're sitting around talking about wellness exams with your family, it's the family history that guides a lot of these. When do we start colon cancer screening? When do we start testing for prostate cancer? Those sorts of things. And so trying to find out what your family's real history is. And one of the things that people maybe don't think about is in colon cancer screening, if your family members have had polyps on their colonoscopy, that actually affects your risk as well, and when we would start doing colonoscopies. And so people don't generally talk about their colonoscopies at the dinner table most of the time, but asking,
why not?
Yeah.
At this point, I mean, there's been worse talk at the table.
Exactly. But how did that colonoscopy go, and did you have any polyps? And then bringing that information back to your doctor, because they may want to do your colonoscopy earlier than you thought.
So Jack and Becky, we saw the picture of your large family, and you're really quite a great example to them. Do you talk to your children, your daughters and son-in-laws about taking care of their health?
Yes. Our son, Robert, has a rare disease, and he was diagnosed at 21. And so we know that you have to be checking on your body constantly. And his symptoms were just tiredness and soreness and roving arthritic pain, and it ended up it's a lifetime disease. And doctors are some of the most wonderful people in the world. I mean, if you can't trust your doctor, then it's really hard. You know?
Yeah.
So
Find a new doctor.
Yeah, exactly. Shop around. It's okay to ask questions, and as we always say, get those second opinions. So Becky, how do you and Jack prepare to go into a wellness visit each year? Do you have a list of questions? Do you kind of go head to toe and think, what do I need to ask about?
That's kind of what it is. It's pretty. We are not planners on that, except for when we go to vacation.
What's nice is I show up.
Yeah,
okay?
that's the key.
And the doctor has my medical history there, okay? And quite frankly, I've forgotten, a lot of the stuff that I've had and been through. And it's really good, to have someone who knows the system, knows everything, and you go through it.
So that's good.
And
Showing up is key.
And you just hope they don't find anything that was missing and that might be a serious illness.
Well, and that brings me to a question for Dr. McRae. Yeah, it's just when you're gathering this information and you do find something, like you did with Becky, something suspicious and needing to get this checked out, what are those steps, and how do you talk with patients about that to kind of ease their fears?
Yeah, so I think part of it is really kind of going through the whole system, seeing if anybody if a patient has any symptoms that maybe they don't think about that would be concerning to me. And then I use that C word, concern. I am concerned about this spot on your face, or I'm concerned about your abdominal pain or your weight loss or something like that. And then that is my sort of way to start talking about, I think we need to do something more about this, either some lab work or have you see a specialist or imaging or something like that.
Not necessarily to be alarmed.
Yeah.
But again, a concern, let's get it checked out and find out.
Yeah.
Jack, were you going to say something?
Oh, I was just going to say that when I come, I'm okay if they find something. In fact, that's the purpose. Is if I have a problem, I want to take care of it. And now medical care is really getting good.
Yeah.
The treatments, they usually work. It helps, and I like that.
Yeah.
I like it.
It's there for you to utilize.
It is there. Yes, it is there. Yeah.
And Dr. McRae, it's a good problem to have, but people are living longer.
Yeah.
So what advice do you have for people to say, it's not, you don't just fall off on your exams. You got to go for the long haul, because if you're going to be around a long time, let's do it right.
Yeah. So I think if you need medications, taking those medications, and if you don't like how the medications make you feel or you don't understand them, let your doctor know. Talk to your doctor about that, because we generally don't want to give somebody medications unless they need it. So there's a reason we want you to take your cholesterol medicine or try to get your blood pressure under control, even if you don't feel poorly at that moment, to stay active. So arthritis or just fatigue, as we all get older, we all feel maybe a little less great or a little less youthful, but you want to try to stay active. You want to try to stay independent as much as you can, because that's going to keep you healthier for longer. And I think another important thing is keeping your brain engaged in social interaction. So major risk factors for kind of cognitive decline and dementia are social isolation and not, I guess, using your brain on a regular basis. So interacting with friends and family or joining interest groups, doing word searches, those sorts of things can actually be a really important part to maintaining that brain health long term too.
I love how you brought up medication. In a society that is medicated, oftentimes it's nice to say, hey, let them know. You get prescribed something, let them know how it's working, if it's working, if it's not working, we'll either change it up or stop it.
Exactly, yeah. I want to know that.
Love that.
Yeah.
So be sure to ask your questions. Nothing's off limits. Get them in, use chat, or you can use the chat on YouTube and Facebook. You can tweet us, of course, or email the Medical News Network. The information is right there on your screen. We're going to get a quick check on the COVID count. Dr. Dana Hawkinson is out today, but I got him covered. Today we have 15 total inpatients. 4 are active COVID cases, 0 in the ICU, and 0 on ventilators. Do we have any reporter questions? Well, let's get to our viewer questions. We've always got good ones. What if you do not have a primary care physician? Does going to like a Minute Clinic just for a basic wellness exam, does that provide the same level of care? What should you do?
My opinion would be no. I don't want to denigrate anyone who maybe works in those clinics, but I think an important part is I know my patients really well, and by seeing them every year, twice a year over time, I learn their history and I know how they are when they're well, and so then I can see when they're sick. And so a Minute Clinic isn't going to have your comprehensive medical history. They're not going to know you as well. And so they're just going to be going based off of maybe your age and your BMI and your gender, and not so much those kind of richer details in your history that might affect what we need to do.
Well, and you make a good point. Our Minute Clinic friends, they are there, and our doctors or those experts are there to serve a really, really important purpose,
Yeah.
but not necessarily to know those long-term
Yes.
health needs.
Yeah.
As far as screenings go, are there any screenings that fall off for people as they age, like mammograms, colonoscopies?
So there are a lot of societies with a lot of guidelines, but generally using the United States Preventative Healthcare Task Force guidelines, for women, we oftentimes stop doing cervical cancer screening at age 65 because the incidence of new cervical cancer after 65 goes down. Mammograms, colon cancer screening, we generally stop at 75 unless someone is very, very healthy and we think that they might have 10 plus more years of life, and then we would have a conversation about continuing to do those things. You know, some of the screenings can be invasive, like a colonoscopy, so you want to make sure that if you're doing it, it makes sense and that the screening itself isn't doing harm. But if you find something early and that person would want to follow through on treatment, then that might make sense to continue doing beyond those sort of maybe stop at 75 ages.
So let's get some advice here. Here's a question. My parents don't do yearly wellness visits. How do you suggest we bring that up to our parents? We know we're going to have a good opportunity this weekend. I'll start, Jack, with you.
Yeah.
What might be a good way to approach somebody? I mean, I think it's like talking to anybody about a sensitive topic.
You know, I don't find it difficult, you know, to
Right.
somebody to say, hey, you can get a checkup, and under Medicare, you know, there's not an expense, you know, to have a wellness checkup. So it's kind of a no-brainer.
Right.
Really.
But Becky, you know, not everybody, let's be honest, parents don't want to hear their kids tell them what to do.
That's true.
So how do we do it? How do we
My kids
delegate?
never wanted me to tell them what to do. But
You know, it's like, leave me alone. I've been
Yeah.
doing this for decades. I got this. And look at me. You know, a lot of people will say, hey, I've had no problems. I've had no health problems. You don't have a problem until you have one. So how do we kind of tap around that?
I think we just have to not worry about it and just address it immediately and say, look, you are getting close to death and you don't want it to be a hard death. And if you're being checked annually by a doctor who has kept up with your health, then it gives you an advantage. And it's also somebody that you feel like cares for you when you go there, and they're looking at your whole being. And you know, I was grateful when I didn't have to have a pap smear anymore, and grateful when I didn't have to have a colonoscopy. I didn't know that at 75 I would be so excited, but
It pays off to get older, doesn't it?
does. You know, but it's just nice to have that. It's like insurance. You know, it's
Yeah.
and we have moved a lot earlier in our marriage, and so we have had different doctors, and even at KU we've had, and we are so grateful to have you. And I think sometimes it's good to change doctors, you know, just because then it's a new person looking at you.
And that can be a challenge because
Yeah.
when you move around, it's like, oh gosh, I gotta
Yeah.
find a new provider. Some people go, and you know, they put it off for a year or two. So that's why we go back to that annual. But I like that advice. Just
Yeah.
talk about it. And
Yeah.
it shows that the doctors care, but when your family talks to you about it, it shows how much they love you and care.
Yeah. You know, I just turned 80, and when I reached that goal, I thought, you know, I always had in my mind, that's fine, I'm ready. You know, I'm ready. I can check out. But then I started thinking, you know what? 90 doesn't look so bad.
It doesn't.
And just because of the health care. It really is.
No, and
you get confidence in the ability, you know, to have a good life.
I love how you said that. And then again, if you're just joining us, he was just talking about this brand new slick sports car that he's trying to figure out. So I think you got another good decade in you, right?
Maybe.
Hey,
I hope so.
And do it in
Let's see.
style. I love that.
There you go. There you go.
Should you fast before you have a wellness visit? That's a question.
It depends. If you haven't had labs drawn and you think you need labs, you can fast. Don't let fasting be a barrier, though. If you can't fast, if it makes you lightheaded or it just doesn't work out with your schedule, just come as you are. And if we need to get labs, we can get them, even a cholesterol panel, and interpret that without you fasting. So if you can, it's great. If you can't, come anyway. It's fine.
Come as you are.
Yes, yeah.
Dr. McRae has talked a lot about physical activity. I'll start with you, Becky. What's your favorite thing to do just to get some sunshine and get the blood going?
Well, two things. I like to ride bicycles with my husband, and we do that frequently. We have e-bikes, and I go birding, and that requires you to walk and use your so you do a lot of walking with that. So I
birding.
love
Interesting. Where do you do that?
Well, yesterday I went with a friend. We went to Dunn Ranch up north, which is close to the Iowa border, and then you walk in the prairies, and it's just a way to look at life that is absolutely beautiful and fascinating and wonderful.
That's good for the soul
Yes.
and the brain. I love that. All right, Jack, what do you do besides riding the bike, following her around on her
Mainly
bike?
that, and I play a little golf.
Okay.
And walk a little bit. I'm trying to do some weights.
Good.
But I'm not. I got to work on that.
Good.
So I every day, every week I want to get some exercise, 45 minutes a day.
Yeah.
Something. It doesn't have to be too strenuous, but just get moving.
Something.
And get moving.
Don't even have to show up at the gym. Just get out and about.
Yes.
I want to get our takeaways today. And Dr. McRae, let's start with you. What do you want folks to take away from our chat today?
I think that I would say just if you don't have a primary care doctor, please try to find a primary care doctor. We are there to help you, and we want to try to find things early so that we can help take care of those health risk factors before they become a problem. Manage your cholesterol before you develop heart disease, those sorts of things. And I think another thing is when you then finally go to primary care doctor, sometimes you get a list like this. We give you a to-do list of all these different colonoscopy and bone density scan and all these labs and things like that. You can ask us to prioritize that for you so you don't feel like you have to do 27 things in a week. And I'll let my patients know, okay, I want you to do these 3 things in the next 3 months, and then after that, get these other screening tests or whatever done when you can. And then that I think makes it a little less intimidating to kind of get started with your health if you're not trying to do so many things all at once.
Yeah, that really makes sense. I could see a big list like ending up in the junk drawer or something if it's too
Just
overwhelming.
too many things. Yeah.
Just take it one screening at a time. Jack and Becky, what do you want folks to take away from this story, from you as a couple?
I would say that getting back to wellness checkups, it's all pluses. I mean, I don't see the minus in it. I really don't. You just have to show up.
Yeah.
and away you go with
And
it.
you even said no minus, even if something negative shows up.
In a way, that's a plus.
That's actually a plus.
You can get it worked on. So,
Becky, what's the final takeaway today?
Just be grateful that we have good doctors that want to see their patients every year and will let you know if there's an issue. And it's just, I agree with Jack, it's a no-brainer, and KU has helped us get through this and find Jennifer McRae, our doctor, and it's not that we went on that journey alone, and so that's really good.
Good. Well, we want to keep you around for all those grandkids and grandkids, great-grandkids, all the things. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Happy Father's Day
Thank
this
you.
weekend.
Appreciate
Happy
it.
Father's
Thank
Day.
you. Thank you.
Have a great one. And thanks
you.
to all of our guests. And all of you have a great Father's Day weekend. And we'll see you back here Monday at 8. Coming up Monday on the Morning Medical Update, 11 million Americans are caring for loved ones with Alzheimer's. I'm Jessica Lovell. On the next Morning Medical Update, we revisit the emotional journey of Alexis Del Cid, taking the next step in giving her dad the right memory care that he needs. Monday at 8.
Subscribe to our Morning Medical Update and Open Mics with Dr. Stites podcast. Now everywhere podcasts are available.